On tonight's podcast, we are speaking with Shawn Gibson, a journalist in Barrie, Ontario, and the owner and promoter of Barrie Wrestling. All right. So thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in this week. I'm so excited with our guest this week because I've known him for a very long time, and I've never had an opportunity to have a conversation like this before with you. So this is something I've been looking forward to for a long time. The guest today is Shawn Gibson, the promoter and owner of Barrie Wrestling and a journalist in Barrie. We're going to talk to Shawn a lot more in just a second, but before we do, I just want to say hi to Mark and Aurora, our co-hosts this week. Guys, how you doing?
Aurora, go ahead.
I'm doing really well. It's been a fairly busy week at work. We're down a person. Because one of my staff went to Romania. But I have, positive news. I'm babysitting my mom's cats, and I'm just in cuteness overload all the time. So
are they going to make an appearance tonight or what?
I don't want them to come into the podcast room because there's other things in here, and I wouldn't want them to potentially knock things over. But maybe later I'll bring them down, after.
See how it goes. Yeah. That's cool. You've been wanting some sort of little critter in the house for a while. So
yes, their kittens are crazy, but it's a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah,
very exciting.
Mark, how about you?
I'm doing well. Excellent, as a matter of fact. It's been a busy couple of weeks. I know I missed some shows there that we taped. I had some house guests actually here in Thunder Bay, so it was good. Had some family stop by and stay a couple of nights on their way through. So it was really great to actually see a familiar face from Southern Ontario. Lots of fun there, and I'm still channeling that chef from that show with Christina. I did more ribs last night on the smoker, and they turned out awesome.
Jeez, that show made a lasting impression on you.
Yeah, I've just been experimenting like crazy, and work is work. It's busy. We've still got vaccinations happening and lots of stuff happening. So it's just a super busy time, but always great to be back on the show. Looking forward to talking to Shawn.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get to it. Shawn, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Just back to work this week. I was off last week, so I was back at it. But yeah, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good. I mean, there's been things happening with you in my life, which is really exciting. We did some stuff for the All Ontario Cup, which I'm stoked with. Yeah. The photos turned out pretty cool. But there's so much more that you do than just wrestling. I could spend an entire podcast just talking to you about your wrestling stuff, but let's not talk about that yet. Let's talk about the real job, your 9 to 5, the thing that pays the bills, the thing that you have to do, but do you enjoy to do? I mean, that's why I've invited you on here. You've managed to take your passions, writing and all the other things that you do, and turn them into your day-to-day life, whether it's the wrestling stuff, which is, you've admitted that's fun. That's your fun time. Yeah. And then the other stuff. So why don't you first tell us, what is it that you do? What is your primary 9 to 5?
So, and my wife, Amanda, will laugh at the 9 to 5, my 8 to whenever, 10, 12, whatever. But my 9 to 5 job is, I'm a reporter for Barrie Today News. So barrietoday.com. And we've got different outlets. Village Media owns different media outlets throughout the province. I'm a reporter with them. I've been doing that for quite a while. I was freelancing for many years while I held a job at warehouses and trucking companies, but I just did I gotta do this. So I just jumped full in on full-time freelance, and they eventually hired me on. But yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's a lot of fun.
And it is totally no hours. I mean, you're just all over
crazy. I make a joke about that, but it is more or less, like an 8 to 5, 9 to 5 kind of thing. But you sit. It's happened before. You're sitting on a couch, and I'll get a message from somebody like, "Hey, there's like a huge fire, or there was this major accident." And, you gotta, get dressed, hop out the door, and get going. So. It can be pretty erratic at times. The tornado that just came through here was kind of completely off guard, obviously.
Okay, so let's go to that for a quick second. The tornado, we just had a massive tornado, like a legit Kentucky tornado.
Yeah.
Going through Barrie, which that never happens. So how does that happen for you? How does your day begin? Walk us through what happened through that whole process, because I think that'd be really interesting.
It was, my editor was off, so there was a few of us working, and the main editor that was working and overseeing things from Aurelia. But it was a slow day. Like I was kind of putting stuff off. I had a story to do, and I was like, I'll get to it. There's no rush, no big deal. Started getting the warnings or the watches that there was something coming, but we get those all the time. So it wasn't, I was keeping my eye on it, but nothing big. And we just started. I don't know what it was. There was something about it. It was one of those hunches, and I just went outside and I said to Amanda, I'm going to take a drive. The south end is getting reports of some heavy winds. I'm going to take a drive that way. Like if you go down my street, you can kind of see over the lake, and then see the south end of town. I wasn't getting the greatest view, so I just kind of kept driving that way. And my editor messaged me and said, hey, my wife just said there was a tornado in the south end. So I asked somebody else. They said, yeah, it just went by my mother-in-law's house. And so I just booted it over there. And you get there, and I've not done a tornado before, obviously. But I got to the south end, and I knew something was up because I had to pull over 5 times for emergency vehicles to go by, and getting closer to the area, I had my windows down. The south end, there was just sirens in the sky. It was just nonstop sirens. I got up to the school that was kind of close to where there was you could see there was a lot of heavy, traffic for emergency vehicles. And, there was shingles off of roofs and all that kind of stuff. So I parked the car and I was walking up, and it was kind of disarray at the time. It was pretty early after it. I was there, maybe 10 minutes after it happened. And there was a guy behind me, and he said, hey, I was going to go up the street just because basically we had heard that a little plaza on the corner had been hit. So I was going to get some photos of that. And he said, you don't want to go up there, man. And I was like, no, thanks. I'm good. I got it. And he's like, no, really, you don't want to go down that street. I'm like, I'm probably not, but I'm media. It's my job. Thanks a lot. And as we got closer to the street, it was kind of blocked by a big fence. And I thought maybe I sounded off with him. So I just turned around and said, hey, I appreciate the advice, but I'm media and I got to go. He's like, okay. And as I turned kind of back around, I had kind of got to the corner of the street, and I saw the street, and I was not ready for it. Like my breath, it did do the literal taking my breath away. And walking, there was just roofs off of houses. There was a house collapsed. There was a car flipped over. There was 2 cars flipped over. It was from a movie, and I hadn't seen that in person. It was just really bad. It was really, nobody died. That's all that matters.
But that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah. It was crazy. It was just crazy. And my data wasn't working. So I took a ton of pictures, and then you kind of look around and go, okay, get it together and do your job. So I snapped as many pictures with my phone, and I was just going to send them to my editor and say, here, throw them up, say a tornado touchdown or something, and we'll get more story to come. But I couldn't get it to him because it wouldn't send. I could call him. I could do everything but data, and obviously no Wi-Fi. So I told him that. He said, okay, keep trying. Let's get this up as quick as possible. So I had to it started to downpour. And so everybody ran to their vehicles or wherever they could. And I just started driving around the area to see if I could pick up a signal. And I had to go way down the street. And there was a lady standing outside her house. And it was pretty far away from the scene. And I just said, I explained who I was. Could I use your Wi-Fi? And so they let me use their Wi-Fi, and I threw my pictures up to my editor, and then I went back. But yeah, it was something else. You're just not ready for it when you don't see it.
That had to have been the craziest story you've had to cover so far.
It was the craziest. It was definitely, there was a huge fire when I was a freelance writer. That was huge. But actually, my daughter just asked me earlier because I was telling about today. There was a story today, and a firefighter who had retired last year, but recently found out that he has stage 4 cancer, and it's likely because of his job as a firefighter. And he has 12 days, and he's at that point. So, it was calling calling the numbers we had for the chief, or it was one of the people he works with, and then getting the number to his hospital room and his brother. So the plan was, I was talking to him and the brother. He couldn't speak, and I'm happy he wasn't able to really communicate at the time. He was able to, like, he set up. There was a big parade. The story was there was a big parade that went by the hospital. There had been about 50 fire trucks, and they just saluted him and said goodbye. But I was talking to my daughter about that, and she said, that must be the hardest story you've done. And I'm like, no, I think the hardest one I've done is Roberta Place, the seniors during COVID, you know, 41 days of an outbreak and 71 deaths. And every day it was just 4:30, their media contact would get a hold of me and say, hey, Shawn, we have an updated number. So it was just basically like, you know, 2 deaths, this many illnesses, 5 deaths, this many illnesses, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and then one day was 9. And that was I was crying. I was typing on my computer crying. It was around dinner time, so I couldn't go have dinner. And the next day was, like, 2 days later was 8. That was another emotional day, and that took a toll. I think that'll be one of those ones that, like, you know, 20 years from now, someone will say, what was your hardest story? And I'll say Roberta Place.
Yeah. And unfortunately that brings you back to the whole COVID world. And
I
mean, this is, as a reporter, you're probably never going to get past that.
No, thankfully, though, if you read online, I'm getting paid big bucks by other governments to write stories for them. Apparently Trudeau is paying me lots of money. No, but I mean, there's so many that is wrong with it. So much that is wrong with it, right? I mean, it's every story can come back to COVID. You know, it's like, do a story on a business that's starting up. Awesome. Oh, how'd you do that in COVID times? And everything comes back to COVID. And it doesn't matter what you put on there. It doesn't matter what the story is. There's, you know, 90 people ready to tell you you're lying about it. You know, you're part of the problem, and you just got to shrug it off eventually. You know, yeah.
Well, that kind of goes with my next question for you. I mean, how do you handle not only shrugging it off and having all the COVIDiots and the stupid people that just like to just bash about anything that they can? Because you're gonna get the brunt of that as a reporter. Your face is out there, your words are out there. But beyond that, how do you just deal with all of the stresses of being a reporter and seeing the things that you do? A big part of our show is mental health, and you know, the reason that we each do this podcast individually, or a big reason at least, I can't speak for every reason, but a big reason is because it's good for our mental health, right? Like we have enjoyed talking to people and so on. This has been part of our therapy. Do you have anything that you do for your therapy? I know Amanda, and she's amazing. Dixie's breaking my window down. Give me 1 second. If I don't do this, and there's going to be all hell breaking loose. Sorry, go ahead.
You know, actually, for the COVID stuff, there's just, you know, you have to, you know, my editors often said, okay, tone it down. Like you kind of want to go back with them, but there's no point. There's no logic to. There's just nothing. There's no point going back and forth with people. But a good example would be the Roberta Place. You know, there was only one option, and that was to do the job. There was no other option. So it wasn't like, I can't do this anymore, I quit. But I remember one night my editor said, hey, man, you up for a call? And I was like, no, I'm not right now. And he kind of left it. And then he kind of called me like in an hour. He's like, are you good? Like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, that was a bad day. He's like, why? What happened? And I'm like, 9 deaths. And he's like, oh, he goes, yeah, no, okay. And he didn't know that. And I was emotional about it. And I said, it's hard, man. And he said, do you want me to get someone else to do it? And I was like, no, like I'm in, but it's just hard. And I said to him, it's hard to do. My emails were the same, and I had to reword them. But basically what I was asking that media lady was, what were the death numbers today? Hey, let's do the numbers. What were the numbers? And it was too hard. So I started doing stories. You know, there was a Facebook group about the Roberta Place people that have passed and share your stories. And I asked the administrator, she was a nurse at Roberta Place. And I said, here's what I'm doing. Here's my job. Can you talk to families if they want to talk and tell us who these people are? Like, who is it that died? Their grandmother died. What did she do? What's her story? Because they may not have grew up in Barrie. Maybe they came from another city, but they're Barrie now, you know? And she did that. She reached out to many families. And I think I was able to get maybe 15 to 20 stories, maybe. And that helped me. Like, it made me realize that it wasn't just, I'm not just doing the numbers, and I'm not just some, heartless reporter. Like, we're trying to get more out there. So every time I get for every 10, negative responses, I'll get messages from people saying, "Hey, you did a story on my grandma," or today, after today's one of the firefighters messaged me and said, "Hey, read your story, man. That was fantastic. The family's really happy." And that's, I mean, I could get trolled 500 times tonight. It won't matter. I'm feeling good. So yeah, the mental health aspect's hard in this job for sure. For sure.
How does family help you with that?
They're good. Like, they're pretty good. Amanda I get to my office and she kind of asks, "How's your day going? What's your story?" And I'll tell her the story. And like today's story with the firefighter, I had posted the original story about what was happening, letting people know this parade was happening. And then I had to get over to the parade, so I went upstairs to get dressed, and I opened the door, and her face was kind of red, and she's like, "I just read your story." Like, she's like, "That's terrible." And so, if I want to talk, she'll kind of talk a little bit about it, but she just knows, give me a little bit of space. Let me, if one of those deep stories, then just give me the space. But then I'll talk about it later. Some of it's hard. And not to keep going, but there was one a little while ago last year of a plane crash in Midland, and the police weren't talking, and we were like, people are asking what happened to the plane, and they were not talking. And then we kind of went, okay, was it one person in the plane? They're like, yep. And we're like, okay. So we started searching the name, and I found the wife on Facebook, and she was talking about if you're struggling from mental health, seek help. And it was a suicide. And then it's my job to Facebook message this wife and say, "Hey, do you want to talk?" And you feel like a jerk, but she was like, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do. It's time we did." And I did that story, and that was just powerful stuff. Like, she was so brave to speak about it. But the mental that was hard to listen to, but after it was done, you're like, this might help somebody. Somebody might read it might help them. So, because Brian, I know you and myself, the mental health's a big thing. Like, we talk about it often on our shows and different aspects of life, but it needs to be talked about, enough hiding it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, that's a big part of why we do the show in general. Now, mental health, I find, being in retail sales, in cameras, in the world of, creative people, a lot of people during COVID were drawn to being more creative for their mental health. In the questions that I sent you, I asked you, what is your creative specialty? And you answered writing. As a journalist and a creative writer, I feel I do well at it because I love it. Now, even through all the hard stories and all the other things, do you still have that passion? Do you still have that love for being a creative writer? And do you find creative writing helps you telling the journalistic side? Because I know in photography, you can't mess up a photo. You can't edit a photo for journalism. It is what it is. And writing, you have to also give that kind of level-headed view of it, I guess.
Yeah.
So do you find your creative writing experience has helped you with the other side of things, just to keep things more, happy or a lighter side to a story or anything?
Yeah, for sure. I like to write on the side. I've as every writer wants to, I've got like 3 books I want to write. So if it gets really tough, I kind of dive into that aspect of my mind and try to focus on that and work kind of through that, work through those situations and those stories I want to write. And it kind of draws me away that I'm not thinking about the stories I just did. And I can just be creative, because you do a story like any news story and it's facts. What did they say? What did that person say? That's the facts. This is what's happening. With creatively, I can just kind of play around with it. I can have fun with it. And it really takes you places. Like, writing and reading just takes you places. So it does help a lot.
Awesome.
I feel like, though, you have been able to, just like from listening to this conversation, you have been able to take a creative approach to journalism, though, because there's a lot of people out there who would be writing a COVID story, like in the nursing home, and they would just be reporting the numbers and the tragedy and like the hardship on the staff and that kind of thing. And not necessarily tell the stories of the people that were lost as a result of that. You've taken kind of you're presenting the facts, but it's in a very unique and creative way. And I think that's really awesome. That you're able to kind of like pull that, even though it's delivering facts, you're kind of able to pull your passion into it.
Yeah. I learned that it's not as a serious topic, but when I was freelancing years and years ago, and I was living in Brampton, and I covered a curling event and it was a great thing for a freelancer. It was the Ontario Women's Scotties. So teams from all over Ontario came to the Dixie Curling Club. So as a freelancer, I reached out to the paper in Ottawa and said, hey, instead of sending someone down here, I'll cover it and send you it. So I covered all these different rinks. And as a new freelance writer or a younger freelance writer, I was like, okay, I got to cover the game and this player and this player. And, man, I can't remember his name, a guy from the Toronto Sun, and he used to write columns all the time. And he was there and just kind of taking it in, very polite. Hey, how's everybody doing? No pen, no paper, no recorder, just watching. And I thought, well, I'm going to read what he writes this week and see. And he wrote a story. I clipped it out. It's somewhere in my house. And basically, while I'm trying to find all this stuff about all these players, I remember he started off basically saying, like, the most important person at the curling rink, I spoke to them in the bowels of the rink. He's the ice maker. And he did this story on the guy who gets the ice ready and how hard that is. Because it wasn't just like it's easy. I mean, it's a hard job. I've watched it before. And tell me your story. Well, and he was in it for like 30 years, and he's seen this player come through here. And every time I'm stuck, I think of that story, and I think, how can I take a backdoor to this story? And it was wonderful. It was such a great story, such a great column.
That's a great example too. That's a really great example.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like it was for sure. So much fun. It's a way to be creative and not, because you don't want to tell the same story everybody else is telling 1,000 times over. The day with the tornado, we were, it's get the destruction, talk to people, talk to this. And my editor was like, somebody find an insurance adjuster the next day, like find them on site. And it's like, yeah, that's right. Talk to them, because that's a lot of people will have that question, right? So take a back door to it for sure.
The insurance part, that's interesting. I remember when we had a windstorm here a few years ago, they took a bunch of roofs off, and there were people coming in from Calgary and all over the place to, I don't know if it was all scamming or what, but I'm sure there was a ton of that going on with the insurance for up and Barrie.
Yeah, absolutely there was. Yeah, we had to cover that side of it too. Yeah. But,
Mark, did you have anything you wanted to ask?
No, I was very similar to what Aurora said. I love that you take a different spin on it, and I love the example of the ice maker. That's just something that people don't think about. And as a photographer, quite often you're taking a picture, and I mean, you can go see the Taj Mahal, and then you can turn around and say, I've got that picture, but everybody has that picture of the Taj Mahal. So take it from a different angle, take it from a lower angle or a side angle or whatever. And that's the same way you're spinning that story. So I guess my question is when you've got a story like, we'll use the tornado, it affected so many people, and there are so many stories to tell and so many spins on it. How do you sort of pick which one is the most important for you to cover at that time, or are you gauging it on other media outlets and what they're doing and saying, okay, I need to be a little bit different?
With the situation with the tornado, it was immediately just finding someone to speak to, and that's always tough because I just really hate to invade someone's privacy after something like that's happened, but that's the job. So, there was a family sitting near the school that turned into the command post for everything. And they were sitting there, and you could tell that they clearly had rushed out of the house. They had to rush out. And I spoke to the one girl, and she was open. She was like, yeah, I'll tell you. And she had some great quotes. I ran into the closet and things was flying through my window. And so that was great. And then that was pretty much the best one. And then I just had to go find a few more. You got to talk to as many people as possible. And there's some people who, one guy was, I'd say he was rude, but he just had his house damaged. He wasn't rude. He didn't want to talk, and I was just like, no problem, sir. Like, absolutely. I hear you. But Yeah, I think it's just, you'll see other outlets that are there, and they'll see TV, but we get along too. I mean, if I get an email about a private story and it's like, hey, you might want to know about this, I'm only telling you guys because I trust you guys, then I don't share that until we put it out there, and we try to break it as soon as possible. But in a situation like the tornado, we get along. I've often said we're all on different teams, but we're in the same league. So, something I won't. I'm trying to beat that news outlet every day. We are trying to kick their butt every day, but I'll be damned if I'm going to let them get slammed by some troll on social media or somebody smack talking them that's a politician or anybody. We're on the same team, so we've got to act like it. But yeah, in a situation like tornado, it's kind of fend for yourself in the chaos, and then as the days go on, you kind of start to work together in a sense when you can.
Absolutely. So I've seen a lot come out from the tornado. Obviously, I lived 2 years ago. I lived about 5 minutes from there. I lived in Innisfil, at the north end of Innisfil, so that would have been right in my backyard. But I've seen a lot of stories come out from the tornado, from the community outreach and all of the helpers they had. I saw one snippet about how many volunteers they were expecting. Yeah. I think they said 60 to 70 volunteers, and they had hundreds show up to help with the cleanup. So that's those are great things. And as a rule, I don't spend a lot of time reading the news.
Right.
But as a rule, when I do read the news, I read the entire article.
Yes.
And as I know, a lot of times a headline can be forced, that sensationalism to grab you.
For sure.
But my question is, when you're dealing with that headline, how do you deal with the headline and then the story to make sure that they tie together, so that it's not just a sensationalist headline like something like Nikon closing all camera divisions and shutting down.
What?
And then you
what are you talking about?
Right? And then you read the article.
Don't joke about it.
Then you read the article, and they're closing down all of the camera divisions, shutting down for Christmas Day.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's how they grab you at the headline and bring you in.
For sure. And I can't deny that happens. Obviously, there's times that happens. With the tornado, one of our reporters interviewed, I can't remember his name, but he's a famous guy who chases tornadoes, and he works at university. And he said his quote was that, Barrie is prone to tornadoes. And while people would say, well, you had one in 85 and you had one the other day, that's not the case. We had one in 85. There was one in Angus that didn't get this way. And we've got those storms coming through here all the time just because the tornado didn't touch down. And somebody I know, we're friendly, but he's very opinionated, and he said that, quit the sensationalist headlines. Well, I didn't write the story. I didn't write the article, but that's my fellow reporter. So I said, nothing wrong with the headline, man. It's a fine. And he's like, it's not prone to tornadoes. And I didn't even get a response back in until other people chimed in and said, actually, I had just said to my wife, Barrie's prone to tornadoes, because the numbers are, and I don't remember how it went, but we've had 2 or 3 in the area since 85 or on record. And that's way more, and that's only 2 or 3, way more than other areas. Our areas had double what other areas are prone to. So
your area is also known for getting really bad snowstorms. There's a snow belt line.
Yeah, we're right on that belt. And so we get the weather, we get the snow, we get the but with the sensationalist headlines, there are times that you basically, if a guy gives you a good quote, somebody gives you a good quote, that quote will usually go in the headline, and it's that's the quote. He said that. What do you want me to do? But we try to encourage people to read the whole story because not everybody does.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually I lived in the area in 85, so I lived in Newmarket, and I remember when those tornadoes went through. I remember I was at my friend's house, and the sky was literally green.
Yeah,
it was the craziest thing I think I've ever seen to date. And then afterwards, I think it was 2 days later, I was asked to come and help move debris at my girlfriend's house, at her grandmother's house. So we were in Orangeville, and the craziest thing I'd ever seen at that time was there was a tree that had fallen on our house, but there was one branch that had come through, and you didn't see where it came through. But then when you opened the kitchen cupboard, there was this branch coming through, and it had gone down through all the dishes and everything. And there was her dad and her uncles, and they were all cutting it. And my job was just literally when they cut stuff was to drag it out of the house, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
that was the way it worked. But
yeah, you don't even know what's going to happen with these storms.
Yeah,
and it's so crazy. It was, I mean, especially once you heard no one had died, no major injuries. Yeah. Amanda was like, "How's it going?" And I was like, "It's kind of crazy." And it was funny because she never asked, "Do you know what time you're going to be home?" Just so I can throw your dinner in, or because she knew. Because the truth is, while I hate it, while you hate to have to stand out in the rain, I love it. Like I love it. And my editor, who was off that week, he's like, "Oh, hey, what's going on?" I said, "Yeah, I'm there." He's like, "Okay, I'm coming over." And I said, "We're good. We got like 4 people." And he's like, "What, are you kidding me?" And I was like, "Yeah, true." He's the same way, And I remember it was like 9:00, and the editor on call for us he called me. He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Good. I'm just getting a few more picks." And he's like, "We're probably good. You could probably leave." And because I was going back in the morning, but it was one of those things where I think he was told, like, if you don't tell Shawn to leave, he'll camp overnight. So like, go home. And that's like, because you do, you just love it. You don't want to miss anything, and the adrenaline's going, and so yeah.
And there were definitely stories to tell. Like I said, I saw so many stories after the initial, here's the damage and here's what happened. Of course, being thankful that nobody was killed.
Yeah.
And then finding out the different stories. I read one story about, I think it was a paramedic, and all of the other paramedics chipped in to help him out financially and things like that. So
that was one of our ward counselors, Natalie Harris. Yeah. She was, I'm very friendly with her, known her for a while, and she was kind of one of the bigger stories that came out of it. She had video of coming up the stairs in the basement, and the sky was there, and she kept going, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." Yeah. And I did a story with her the next day. I was standing there, and she showed up, and she said, "I got to go to the house because I got to grab stuff from my car." And I said, we'll come with you. And I said, "Can I interview you?" She's like, yeah. And I did with video, which I don't usually do. And it sucks, but it was good as a reporter. Was she got emotional, like very emotional, and because it was just coming back to the scene and realizing that her son was sitting in that window upstairs, and probably had his headphones on, and she hadn't said, "Let's get downstairs." It could have been different.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So obviously, you talked about covering a curling tournament. So I'm gonna do a little flip here. And obviously I know you promote the wrestling, but what other types of events do you? Obviously, a newsworthy event like a tornado is something it's important for people to know the facts on. But what other types of events do you like to cover that are not necessarily, a bad event or a negative event that has happened?
Well, I cover everything, sports, entertainment, all that. But I love. And I'm counting it down now. I love municipal election coverage, and I know that makes me sound like such a geek, but it is such a rush. Like, we've got 10 wards in this community, so there's 10 different things going on. So when we first started Barrie Today, my editor and me and one other guy who's a photographer, and he could write up a couple stories. He could do what he had to do, but he was a photographer mainly. And we just kind of had a game plan and get to this party and get to this one, and if he loses, go see him and do this. We've got more reporters now, so it'll be split up a lot more. But I'm a political junkie, so just to get the elections going and all the stuff behind the scenes and all that, I love that stuff. I live for that.
I'll call you when the next election comes up because I'm a political. I'm a dunce. I know nothing about it. I have to read the platform and go, okay, which one do I think will tell the most truth out of this? Squeeze the truth out.
Yeah,
but I don't know until it's coming up, and I have to research it because I don't follow it. I won't follow it.
Yeah. I just vote for who has the best hair because I'm lacking in that department.
Yeah.
So I just need people with better hair making decisions for me. So you mentioned about the feedback you get from people and how it bothers you or it doesn't bother you. You can just deal with it. The back and forth, you don't get into it. But I know for a fact you do get into it when it comes to the wrestling world.
Get into it. You got to get into it.
So let's get into some wrestling stuff. Unless Aurora or Mark, you guys have any more questions about the journalistic side of Shawn's world?
Honestly, I had a kind of a similar question in relation to what you were just about to talk about. Do you have any advice for people, creative people, more specifically journalists, in dealing with people who are critical or are, like just flat out rude to reporters and stuff like that. Do you have any advice?
I do. I'm gonna plug a light in first, and I'll see if that works. How's that? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What I've learned is, and it's tough. COVID really made it tough. But what I've learned is if you don't say anything, the people that get on there to complain about, we'll call them trolls, obviously. They're not on to hear opinions. They're there to voice their opinion, and they have all the time in the world likely to troll you. And when they really they love it. What I've found is we don't need to. I would tell a reporter, don't comment back. One, because it's actually probably in your contract with work not to, but two is there's people out there that they'll nail them. You don't need to do it because you'll have other people that'll say, "Did you not read the story? Did you not see what they were trying to say?" So you don't have to fight back because it's never going to go the way you want it to. There's no point, and it's frustrating as it is. And sometimes you got to turn it off and walk away. And sometimes I find that to be best. Sometimes I'll mute it. I'll mute the conversations if it's on one of my stories. But I've had it before. Like I've had my editor. I know that it's gotten to me, and I'll be sitting on the couch and I'll be messaging or I'll be saying something back. And I'll just get a text from him. He's like, "Time to holster."
Back away slowly.
He's like, "That one was a little offside." I was like, "Okay, never mind." Because it is tough. It's really tough. Because you just want to fight back. You want to shake them and say, whatever the situation is. But it's just best to walk away. I would tell them just to leave it. It's not your job to. What's the saying I like is it's not your business what other people think about you. So, yeah.
That's actually really, really good advice.
Yeah.
And it is hard. I used to do that. I was that guy that would, I'd see a comment that wasn't right and I'd fire my 2 cents worth in, and then you end up getting into it. And one day I looked at my wife and I went, "You know what? I just had an epiphany." And she goes, "What?" And I said, "It's not my job to please the idiots."
Exactly.
So at that point, I made it. I don't feed trolls and I don't read spam, and that's
right. And Brian and I have a friend. This is the God's honest truth, and you'll hear this and realize I've been doing it. I think he knows I'm doing it. We have a friend named Jim Lowe who's very, very smart politically. Like don't debate. He knows what he's talking about. And if ever something's out of hand, I'll often message him and with a screenshot and say, "Can you believe this guy?" And then I'll just leave it because Jim will jump in there and go right after him, and then I don't have to do anything. So
Nice.
Jim's awesome.
He's like the bulldog you've unleashed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just wind him up, let him go.
He doesn't care. He'll say what he wants to say. And that's also why he's such a great ring announcer in wrestling.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Like he's quick and he can come right in off the cuff. You've got a great group of people that you've assembled for your wrestling. Being a wrestling promoter, that's like I run day trips and I love sitting down and planning a schedule. And we've talked about me and my schedules and all the things that I love to do and plan, and I love it. I just love it.
Great.
You've got to feel the same way with planning for wrestling. I mean, it's not just picking a day, finding a location, getting the right people, but now you got to create storylines, and not just storylines for that day. But you're thinking 4 or 5 years in advance sometimes for some storylines. How did you find the love for wrestling? How did you get involved in being a promoter? And is it all you wanted it to be?
I've been a fan since I was 7. I'm 44, and I've been a fan forever. So, I've always wanted to. I wanted to be a wrestler at one point, but clearly not enough. It was a lot of money. I grew up not a lot of money, so. I just kind of left it, but how I got into it was there was a guy who was doing shows in Barrie, and as a freelance writer, I went to cover it, and he was like, "Hey, you can help out if you want, and help me do my online stuff." And I was like, "Great," and he needed a bigger space, and I said, "Well, I have a gym at my church," so he came out to that. He started there. My pastor, he's about the same age as me, and he's a big wrestling fan. He was like, "This is fantastic," and so the guy ran for a couple of years, a year and a half, maybe 2 years, Brian, I think, and the shows were starting to dwindle, and they weren't good. the gentleman he was having issues at home and health issues. And one day there was a show outdoors, and it was horrible. It was really bad. And my pastor was mad. He was like, "This is the last show because we don't do bad stuff at this church." And I was like, "I hear you. I got you." And I wanted to talk to the guy. I didn't even have a chance. I got to work. I was working at a warehouse in town. And I walked in the door, and the guys were like, "You must be stoked, man. Are you taking over?" And I was like, "What?" And they said, "Yeah, he just posted that he's hanging it up." So I checked Facebook, and I called him and said, "Listen, this is doing really well for our church. Can I take over? Wrestling, right? It's your territory. Can I take over?" And he's like, "Yeah, have at it." So it did. There was our first show was November 2014, and we've been going pretty much monthly. That we started off tri-monthly at first, but since 2015 October, we've gone monthly ever since.
Yeah, I'm just sitting thinking about all the photos that I've taken.
And this is the truth. And Ryan will say, no. But Brian kept us alive, man, because we didn't. I'm not. I don't know if the correct term is not technically sound, or if Brian's going to say, "No, you're an idiot," technically. Because I don't know anything at all. And Brian's photos are what got us out there on social media. Like, we would share the photos, and that's how we got it going. And I think it's the team. I think it's all I've. I think it's definitely all I've wanted it to be, because we don't. We're not greedy. We're not in it for money. We're not in it. I don't want to be the biggest promoter in Ontario. I have no desire to be. The original plan for the Barrie Wrestling was to bring people into the church on a Saturday night, and maybe they'd come back the next day for Sunday service. That was literally the only reason we did it. And I don't leave with money. Personally, I don't take money home. And that's the goal, because I find once a promoter starts taking money and they start thinking, okay, then I can make a little more if I just told this guy not to show up. Like, if I cut him off, and it's just making good relationships. Like our team, Brian on photography, and Shelly does the sound, Jim's on the announcing, my wife, everything else as far as, runs the door, takes care of stuff at home, takes care of stuff inside the building, so I can relax and focus on the creative side. There's a guy named Eric who is creatively, I bounce stuff off of him sometimes, and he helps out all over. Like, it's just a team effort, and nobody's out for glory. That's the main thing. Nobody.
It sounds like just a bunch of cronies like to follow you around.
A bunch of cronies. Yeah, that's an inside thing for us. Yeah, a bunch of cronies. But I think that's all it is, and we've built enough trust over the years with the guys. They know that. I mean, there's times that I've had guys come in and I said, "Look, I can't afford it. I don't know what the gate's going to be like, so I don't want to risk it." And they're like, "Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll do it for this much." And I'll say, "Yeah, I can afford that." And it's happened before. At the end of the night, I'll give them their pay envelope, and I'm like, "Listen, it was a good crowd, so your regular pays in there." Like, it's kind of hard to lie to a wrestler and say, "Yeah, the gate was small," and they can see the crowd, they can tell it wasn't. So just give him his money. Like, give them their money. If they might have said, "Yeah, I'll do it for this much," but if they're worth this much, then give it to them. Mm-hmm. So wrestling can be very seedy, very shady, no doubt about it. But you don't have to let it go that way. And if somebody cancels on you for a bigger show, well, that's okay, because they're trying to get their name out there. You don't own these wrestlers; they don't have a contract with you. So it's all I've wanted, because I've always wanted. I was going through little duotags and notebooks of when I was like probably 10 or 11 making tournaments and using wrestlers. And here we are making tournaments. It's
that's right, Ontario Cup.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. It's fun.
You've mentioned earlier how you're very friendly with so many people in the political world. You kind of mentioned a few names. So I'm very friendly with this person, friendly with that person. I know you to be very social. And you knew the mayor. You had the mayor at your place. You had radio stations at wrestling.
Yeah.
Obviously, being a writer, you're able to use words in a good way.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's helped you with booking people and getting people into the venue. Like, you had Jake the Snake Roberts there.
Yeah, last minute.
But at the same time, you don't book big names.
No. Yeah, we focus on Ontario people. Like, there's no point spending a ton of money. I think you have to know your crowd. And I think the big names are booked by, not always, but by people who want to meet their heroes. And it's like, well, then you're going to lose your shirt, because I actually don't know right now of any promotion that hasn't lost money. And I don't know all of them, but I've heard of so many that have lost money on a show. And I can say that we have not once lost money. Never once broken even, always make even. Never. Because the minute I lose money, I'm out. I have no desire to do it. Right. So there, it's kind of hard to say to your wife, like, hey, I'm going to spend this much money that we don't have because I want to see this guy come in and I want to get a picture with him. It's not worth it. And if you're, and everybody has a different view. Like, maybe somebody wants to do that. Maybe they want to have the biggest show in Canada, so they're going to book the biggest names. That's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not for us. We serve our community. Our community loves what we do. No need to change it. There's just no need to do it.
It's also good because you're giving people who are like either starting out or maybe not have as big of a name out there more exposure to more people.
You're
giving back to the community and that kind of thing. So that's really great.
That's how we started. We used young people because we were new and we can't afford the bigger names. So even like the bigger names of just Ontario. So we had young guys, and I think Brian would agree. The best story we have is the very first match that I ever booked were two guys, Vaughn Vertigo and Gabriel Ferza. And right now, 7 years later, they're our top guys. They're loyal as all hell. And, I'll just the other day, I got, in a conversation with one of them, just saying, hey, I just wanted to talk about something. And then we got to do this. We got to start doing this. And they've turned to the shy kids who didn't want to say anything because they didn't want to be let go by the promoter, to realizing they can tell me what's on their mind and we can talk. And they're real leaders. They're not even just real leaders in our locker room. They're real leaders around Ontario.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For those of you who have seen my photo, actually in your store, Aurora, the big photo that I shot that's in your store right now in Woodbridge is Vertigo and Fuerza, the two guys that he's talking about.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I was thinking, when we were talking about this conversation, I was thinking about that photo. And I was talking to Alex, one of the part-timers at my store, and I said, oh, yeah, so I do this podcast. I film every Monday. And then he said, oh, what's it about? And I told him, and I said, I do it with Brian. And actually, Brian's photo is right there. That's his wrestling photo. And he's just like, wow, that's one of my favorite in the store. I've always thought that. So it was pretty cool.
Well, it's thanks to Shawn that even happened. I mean, it allowing me some time with the wrestlers beforehand to play. And this is another thing. A lot of people have gotten on my case in the past about not charging when I shoot wrestling. I don't charge. I shoot for me. That's my hashtag in life. I don't charge for stuff that I love to do. I've been shooting wrestling with Ron Hutchinson back with AWF, and that led to, the PWE thing with Drury that you were talking about. And then that kind of just transitioned into working with Shawn. And it's just been such a rewarding thing for me. It's paid me in so many ways that, and plus Shelly loves it. I mean, come on, I can't get Shelly to go to wrestling, right?
Yeah.
So it's worked out really well for me. And that's my defense when people criticize me for not taking pay to shoot for Barry. But there's a few things that I think have benefited from this. First of all, a lot of wrestlers have had photos shared, and there's been a lot of buzz created by that. As Shawn said, the wrestling can continue to go even during slower times. You have old data and old stuff that you can put out.
Absolutely.
It's not just helped you, but it's helped me, and it's helped the people that I teach, and it's helped so many other people with what I've learned from doing it. So I think the philosophy of, just doing things for people that do good work is what my big takeaway is from Barry Wrestling. It's a lot of people who do a lot of things for good reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, you hold it in a church.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've often, a lot of people say sometimes, especially from the fall to the spring, our crowds are huge. Barry's a hard time to book.
What's a huge crowd?
A huge crowd we've had is we've hit 350 a few times. And that's probably that's when people get to the door and Amanda's like, we have no more seats, and kind of stand on the wall. And they're like, she's like, yeah, sure. And they'll pay the front of the wall. And, you know, it's like we'll get this packed gym. And at intermission, the best thing is people are talking to each other like they know each other. There's people that don't attend our church. They've never attended a church. But they said that, you know, they come home. Well, we're going home this weekend, or we'll see you, you know. And I've had people say, oh, that's my church. Or not to me. I've heard people say, that's my church. Yeah, that's where the wrestling is. That's my church. That's good enough for me. Like, you know, I don't need you to come Sunday morning if you don't want to. But it is – I enjoy walking around and talking to people and seeing them and saying, yeah, how's – you know, realizing that one of the kids isn't here. Where's the other kid? Oh, he's at Grandma's. Oh, okay. And I love that part of it because that's what it is. When I first got into it, I got a message from somebody. It turned into a bit of a conversation with them, and they said, "Listen, man, if you're not in this business to make the most money you possibly can, you shouldn't even be in it." And I was like, "I will never be like that. That is never going to happen." And 7 years later, we're not. We're still not like that. And I'm glad.
Well, kudos to you, man. I've said it to you before. I've said it to anybody who'd listen that Barrie is different. Barrie wrestling is different than a lot of places, and it's because of the leadership. Anything is always because of the people at the top, and you and Amanda are pretty awesome. So thank you for all the things that you've been doing for the wrestlers in Barrie and for people like myself and Shelley who get to be involved in such a cool thing. You've welcomed us into that whole the Cronies, which I'm a proud member of.
Yes.
And a proud Barrie Wrestling Hall of Famer, which is pretty awesome for me.
Yeah, that was a moment for us. We were so happy to do that.
And on my anniversary too, which was really
good.
But yeah, that was a lot of fun. And thank you so much, man. And for all the writing and all the stories that you bring to people. I mean, that's a really important thing that you do. So
thank you.
I hope it lasts for you for until you're ready to be done with it.
Yes. Till I cast my millions from making money.
Yeah, until we make our millions from all this stuff. Mark, Aurora, do you have any other questions before we get to our 3 big questions before we end the show?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I happened to be able to make the Barrie Wrestling one night when I lived down there. I came down to help Brian. I was one of his voice-activated lights, so I was Val. And so I got to be there and see firsthand. Like, I'd seen wrestling on TV. I was never a huge fan, probably because I wasn't allowed to watch it when I was a child. But if I was allowed to watch it, I probably would have been a fan. But it was interesting to see, and it was neat to see how the wrestlers worked out, because I think that night, Brian, they were doing their finishing moves, if I'm not correct.
That's right.
They were getting pictures of their big finish, and it was really cool to see how they worked together. That effort. Okay, I'm going to make sure this, but they were keeping each other's safety in mind. Yeah. And I know we had a wrestler on the show before, and he said he wasn't an athlete, and I said, "You are an athlete. Yeah. You absolutely are, because I'm not an athlete, and I couldn't do that."
Yeah.
I could carry the storyline, but then as soon as I got in the ring, I'd be like, all right, I'm gassed out. I'm done.
Yeah.
But it was just so cool to see how they all came out. They all wanted to come out and get their pictures from Brian and help Brian get those pictures and the different lighting techniques, because we were using, I think at the time, Brian, you were still using the creative lighting system, right?
Yep, the pop-up flash to fire the other flashes.
Yeah, so for me as a photographer, I knew how to use that system because Brian had taught me, because that's the teacher that he is. But then that evening where I was there, it really showed me how to expand that, how to make it bigger for my own pictures.
Yeah.
Not that I've done anything quite that big where I'm trying to light up an entire gymnasium, but I think there's a lot of good that comes out of that. And absolutely kudos to you guys for running it on basically a zero profit model and making sure that the wrestlers get taken care of and that you've got the fans are taken care of, because I've seen the pictures, I've seen the video, and there are people that really enjoy being there, and they love being there. I just wish now that things are starting up again, it would be easier for me to get there to see it. But
yeah, for sure.
16 hours is a little bit much. Just
It's quite a commute from Thunder Bay. Yeah.
But no, I just want to say kudos to you for keeping it going and all the good that you do with reporting the news and things like that. That's excellent to see. And thank you very much for being here with us.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I have 2 things, actually. One, getting back to the first people you ever booked a show with. I'm sorry, I can't remember the names. Or the people that you started out with. I'm just curious what it's been like to kind of see those people grow. And
even I can answer that one.
Like,
but
you know, like
you go ahead, Shawn.
Feeling like, I guess there's obviously some sort of feeling of pride.
Yeah.
But I'll let you get into it.
It's amazing, and particularly with those two guys. Just first of all, you know, Von Vertigo has gone to the United Kingdom, and he's focusing on Europe. A lot of wrestlers in Canada will focus on the U.S., and it's been fun to see him go out there. I think a really good example is they haven't been with us as long, but they've been here for about 3.5 years. But there's a guy's called the Buffalo Boy, and one of them, you know, Kevin Blackwood, Puff, and Daniel Garcia, they got on TV one time on AEW, and you know, as a wrestler, you don't tell anybody because at the last minute you might be pulled, and then you look like a fool for telling everybody. So my family, we were out, and I came home and I turned the TV on, and the kids were kind of walking around the living room, and I was checking out the TV, and Puff came out, and this house exploded. Like the
this one too.
Oh my God, yeah. They're like,
oh yeah,
it's Puff, and we were going ballistic, and it was unbelievable. And it was Kevin's one of my favorite wrestlers, but Daniel Garcia right now is the kid's 21, and he's the best. He's the number one indie wrestler in North America. It was on a rating right now that's out. I just saw the post today, actually. Or not today, whenever the show airs, whatever. And but yeah, it was crazy. It's crazy to see them succeed and move on, because you want that, you know, you want them to move on.
See, they're a really good example too, because not only did they, I mean, these are three guys from Buffalo who travel to Canada, to Barrie, Ontario, and treat it like it's Madison Square Garden. You know, they give it 100% every single time they show up. And then one day on the ride back from Montreal, they got in a really bad car accident, and they're almost lost their lives, but I mean, they certainly almost lost their careers. And Shawn stepped up and tried to raise some money and tried to, you know, help out these guys.
But Brian stepped up. He's doing it again. Brian did some awesome work with some photos, and we sold it. We got not sold. We were able to raise money through those photos. It's
just. But that's the kind of thing that you do. I mean, this is a Barrie Wrestling initiative to try and help out these guys who potentially couldn't wrestle anymore. And you know, that's what it's about.
It's amazing that it's amazing that Daniel could walk, for example, and he's now the best wrestler in North America, indie wrestler. So yeah, they're a great story.
And I remember that also, story. It was crazy.
To the point of all wrestlers, and I got to give wrestlers a lot of credit. Vertigo and Fuerza, I have like ridiculous pride for these guys, and all I did was take their picture. These guys work out all the time. They are continuously training. They're continuously trying to better themselves. Vertigo went to college for video production and so on, and he's been making incredible videos. And he did Backyard Pro. He's going to be a guest of ours actually coming up soon.
That's right. He's so good.
So good. And this is why I love wrestling, because you meet people like this. You know, we had Brendan on as our first guest, and that was important to me to have a wrestler on as our first guest, and him specifically, because I've had a lot of ups and downs shooting wrestling. There was a period where I almost gave up shooting entirely because of some of the blowback that I got from shooting for free or whatever. And it was really just seeing the wrestlers and seeing how they welcomed me in, and they were friendly to me, and they were nice, genuinely nice people, even though they're beating the crap out of each other in the ring. And like Mark said, you know, they work together. They have to work together, or else they won't work together the next day. So that whole world taught me so much and gave me so much. And I cannot thank you, Shawn, enough, because it's pretty much you that did that for me. So
you guys are fantastic. Yes,
awesome.
Thank you very much.
That's cool.
Okay, so now the questions.
Wait, I have one more.
You have your second.
I have one more. I know we're getting close to the end.
Wait,
no, it's okay. We can record all night.
So,
well, maybe not all.
Before the question, first thing before the question, I just want to say I've never watched wrestling even since the Brendan episode, and I left the Brendan episode being very inspired, very excited to see a wrestling show, because I think that would be very interesting. This is kind of like reinvigorated that again. So when it picks up, I'd love to go and see a show at Barrie, because I live in
July 31st.
July 31st.
Okay, I'll probably be there.
Yeah.
But my other question was actually a question that Brian kind of led into right at the beginning of this wrestling conversation about how you stand up for things in the wrestling world, and we never went back to that, and I'm just curious what, even if it's like a small summarization of that, because that stuck out in my mind.
As far as like social issues and stuff, or standing up for,
like when people comment
people comment or potentially troll or whatever. Brian said you kind of do the opposite in the wrestling world sometimes.
Okay, let me give you a little bit of backstory. We could be at a wrestling event, and all of a sudden, the wrestling fanatics will start to totally disrespect Shawn. Shawn, you suck. Shawn, Gibson sucks. Gibson sucks. There's chance. All that kind of stuff, and that's really where I notice it more. I mean, on threads on social media, it's all very lighthearted. John McHale can only say so much, but I mean, there's so many other things that happen at a wrestling event. And do you just slough that off as being all in fun, or does that ever bother you?
You know what? That's a good question. So a lot of times with the fans, Gibson sucks or they get on me. Whatever. It's the fans, but there's a lot of stuff I take to heart. Like, one of the hardest things about wrestling is I'm trying to please everybody, and you just can't. So like I just had this conversation on this past weekend, and 5 wrestlers will say you should do it this way, and 5 will say no, don't do it that way. Like there's all these different opinions, and I have anxiety. I always feel like I'm not doing it. I'm one of those people. I'm not doing enough. It's never gonna work. I'm not good enough. And if I have a day, and then something happens with wrestling, my escape, the thing that helps me escape, and then I don't feel good there, that's a bad day. That's a bad anxiety-driven day. And a few of the wrestlers, Fuerza and Vertigo, but Vertigo and I talk, but I would say Fuerza, Gabriel Fuerza and I, I'll kind of shoot him a message and say, hey, and I think he can tell when my anxiety's up by the way I'm asking questions. And he'll be like, don't worry about it. Who cares? Just do it. You're the boss. Do it your way. Like, just do it the way you have to do it. But that's the hardest job, is trying to please everybody, and you can't, right? But at the end of the day, I've got to make the final call, and they'll live with it. They'll be fine with it, unless they really hate it and they say, Shawn, I'm telling you, this is a mistake. Then we listen. Then I listen and say, but yeah, when it's the fans, Gibson sucks or whatever. That doesn't bug me. That's okay. That's all right.
Except when they start hating on the Steelers or something.
Well, they're not right. If they're clearly wrong. But that's fine.
Mark, that's football.
Oh, I was going to say I was just going to say I don't watch baseball. I don't know. Yeah. And just in case you didn't figure that out, Shawn, I don't sport at all.
I don't do the sport.
I don't sport at all. Like
I live for the sport.
I actually said to my wife tonight, we were at the chiropractor, and the Olympics are on the screen, and I said, every time the Olympics are on, I am so conflicted. And she goes, why? I said, because I don't care about sports one iota, not at all. But I want Canada to win.
Yeah. I was driving home one morning, and the radio, I was listening to my radio station, and I listened to Fresh 93, and it was when the Euro Cup was on, the recent soccer thing. And Matt and Tara's the morning show. Matt was talking about, the soccer game and this and that. And Tara was like, wait, is this what's happening? Shawn's feed right now is nothing but something. And is it the soccer he's talking about? He's like, yeah, he's cheering for England. And she was like, I don't even know what he's talking about half the time. I love my sports. I love it.
Yeah.
When I don't know what you're talking about, I know it's soccer.
Yeah, I know it's
soccer. I'm pretty good. All right. Are we good for the 3 questions?
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. First question is one that you know already. We asked you earlier.
Okay.
We ask our guests to give a challenge to our viewers, our listeners, something that has helped you in the past or something that you think may help them in their future. So you gave a great challenge. Maybe I'll let you, well, not maybe, definitely go ahead.
Yeah, I would just, I think what I had said was to go for it. Was that the one I was talking about?
Your answer is, do you want me to read it for you?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Go for it.
You can't do it if you can't try.
Yeah, and that's it. Like with journalism, I had been freelancing for a while, but working in warehouses, and I would do these stories, these fantastic stories that were so exciting and so fun. And it went about the Colts and the Barrie Colts and their big OHL run. Or it was something to do with the politics and having lunch with the mayor at a luncheon or something. And then I got back to this warehouse, and nothing wrong with warehousing, but I would get back there and it was dark and dusty and dirty, and it just drained everything in me. And I had a back injury that had snuck up on me, and I had to take some time off, and I focused on writing and met Amanda, and we were dating, and she's like, just quit your job and do freelance. And I'm like, that's not going to pay the bills. Like you'd have to make a certain amount of stories or get a certain amount of stories done. And she's like, so do them. And I was like, it's not that easy. And she's like, it is that easy. She's like, you've got to do something better in your life that you want to do. And that's what I did, and focus on writing. And, the story, when I got hired full time, I'd been freelancing for 5 years with Barrie Today at the time. And apparently there was a big meeting, and I didn't go because I was a freelancer. It wasn't invited. They were being rude. They just didn't have me on the list. And the story was that he was like, where's Shawn? And they're like, oh, he freelances. He's still at home. And he's like, hire him on. He's been here. Like, he was one of the original Barrie Today people. Like, get him on here. So they got me on. Absolutely go for it. Like, whatever the dream is, go for it.
Love it. Love it.
Awesome.
All right. Next question. And this is the important one.
Okay.
What's your jam?
What's my jam?
What's your jam? What's that song that just kicks you in the ass? And every time you hear it, you have to listen to it all the way through. You just love
it. So particularly in the winter. In the winter, I get very creative. I have songs. I'm a big song guy. So like it's fall music, and when the spring hits, it's a different Tragical Hip album than it is a Tragical Hip album in the fall or the winter. But I'm a huge 90s Canadiana person. So as soon as winter hits and it's cold outside, Northern Pikes goes on, or Tragically Hip. But to answer it song wise, I always answer this two ways: Tragically Hip, anything from the album Fully Completely. But if I was stuck on a desert island and I had one song that I could have for the rest of my life, it would be Foo Fighters' Everlong. I would listen to that for the rest of my life. I don't know what it is. It's every emotion involved at the same time. So yeah, that's the song I like.
First time I heard that song, Dave Grohl played it acoustic on the Howard Stern show.
Oh wow!
He just sat there with a guitar and did Everlong, and
it's unbelievable. It's fantastic. But I'm a big, like, I love everything. Like, I'm a big country fan. Sarah McLachlan and I have been in a relationship for close to 20 years. She doesn't know it, but we have. I mean, Sarah McLachlan, I love Sarah McLachlan. So yeah, I listen to everything.
Awesome. Okay, yeah. Next question, and this one is the big one.
All right.
This isn't the big one, but anyway, a tool of the trade. And I always say this when I talk about the tool of the trade question, because in photography, everybody likes to show off their stuff. Everybody likes to look in my camera bag. This is what's in my bag videos and stuff like that. I'm not a big fan of those things. I don't like showing off this or that. I don't think the gear makes the man, but there's usually something that will improve your day-to-day. There's usually a tool that you go to, whether it's a cerebral tool, whether it's a physical tool, whatever it may be, that just gets you through the day and you use all the time. What is your tool of the trade?
Besides coffee, I love coffee.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. Nobody said that yet.
Yeah, coffee is.
We all thought it though.
Oh, yeah. Coffee is everything to me. I love it. So I'm a big coffee person, and I actually need, like, first thing in the morning, 2 cups of coffee to get me going. Just that creative, my favorite mug, and all that. But yeah, coffee for sure. But as a reporter, this is going to sound silly, but like a recorder. And I know it's like, well, obviously you'd have a recorder, but particularly in this day and age, a recorder, because if not, you have potential to have no, I never said that. That's not what I said. It's like, yes, you did. I have my recorder right here. So Yeah, I can't leave the house without that to cover a story or to do anything. And not to mention, I have a terrible memory, so it's good to have that on hand.
Another thing we have in common.
Yes.
I have a good memory. It's just short.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I remember stuff from when I was a kid way better than I remember yesterday. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Coffee. Go back to that for a quick second.
Yeah.
How do you make your coffee? What's your system? What'd you get? I've seen photos that you post. You get all these little toys, and I'm friends with Peter McKinnon, and Peter has all like the little things that he does. And he makes videos and crazy stuff. What's your routine?
I've been, used to just be grab the instant coffee and make instant coffee, but I've gotten right into it. So I've got a roaster and I've got a grinder and a roaster. I have an espresso thing now. I always forget the name of it, but it's the one that's very stereotypical, like Italian coffee shop. The silver one with the sides on it. I can't remember what it's called. And I make espresso that way. But I've been buying the beans now. Green beans. I shouldn't say buying. They've been gifts from Amanda. So I've had Ugandan, Sumatra, Costa Rica, all these different beans from around the world, and they're just. It blew my mind when they were green, and you roast them, and you think, well, I'll just roast them until they're dark, and it's like no, because you can do it like really dark. There's a timer, and I time it to really dark, and because I like a dark roast. And I thought, well, the light roast probably means it's a blander taste. And so when I read up on that, you find out that's not the case. And I tried the same bean at a light roast, and it pulled out more of a one of the bean, like the Ugandan, it pulled out more of a fruity flavor. When I did it really dark, it was more of a chocolatey flavor. So I'm getting into that roasting and the grinding, and man, I love it. That's cool. Yeah, it's a great hobby to have now.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
All right. Mark, Aurora, anything else you'd like to ask Shawn before we let him go for the evening?
Yeah, just when we get invited over for coffee.
I think the coffee game's going to have to step up at the very wrestling shows. I'm going to have to be roasting coffee.
That's awesome. I just wanted to say thanks for coming on, and I probably will end up at one of the wrestling shows just to check it out.
I'll give you a heads up when they are, Aurora.
Yeah,
Okay.
No, and thanks for having me on too. This is a lot of fun though. It's nice to get out and talk. And like Brian said, this without a doubt is the longest conversation. We've known each other for 7 years. Longest conversation we have, because wrestling show days we're so busy,
That's true. And it's funny because all the questions that I really need to ask you I can't do here. So
I'll have to message you after and be like, what time is set up and what time is this?
We make it work. We always make it work. I love working with you, Shawn. I really do.
Man. Same here. We love you guys.
All right, man. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Aurora, for being here also this week. And we didn't even say it, but Ryan isn't here this week. And Ryan is the Knights of the Squared Circle podcast, and he's all about wrestling. And I'm kind of bummed he wasn't able to make it tonight, because I was hoping he would take the lead in this conversation and he would be the interviewer, because that's his bag, right?
Yeah.
But he had his face operated on again today, so he's.
That's good. Like I said earlier, that's probably good, Ryan, that you finally had some work done to your face. I'm looking forward to seeing that, actually. That's good.
That's great. All right, everybody. Thank you all so much. Take care. We'll see you all next week. Stay safe.
Take care.
Bye.
I'm like pretty stoked because this is episode 20.
I know.
Isn't this crazy?
Hold on, what's 20th anniversary? That's got to be.
Yeah, what is that actually?
I don't know. I've had one. I don't remember what
I've had one of those as well.
Yeah, I don't think I gave the right gift for it though. So
China. It's the China episode.
Yeah.
Ooh, China.
Should we leave that out?
Fitting. Well, I mean, China was a pretty amazing wrestler, right? So
I do remember that one. Kitty. There's a kitty I see.
Oh yeah, she doesn't like when I have the blinds down.
I have 2 kittens at my house right now.
Oh, you do?
Oh, you must be in 7th heaven.
I am. They're so cute. They're driving Andrew crazy, but that's okay.
Yeah.